All right, welcome back to Please Read Your Book. My name's Carl. I talk about books, and in this video I'm going to talk about 5 great horror books that I read in 2024. So this is one in a series of videos I'm kind of putting out now where I'm talking about 5 great crime books, 5 great horror books, 5 great graphic novels, manga or comics, and then 5 great lit fic books that I read. So let's get into it. This one is all about horror. These are not published in 2024. So if you're looking for that, you're in the wrong place. But I did read these in 2024. Some of them, a couple of them were rereads, but it had been so long that it felt like a fresh read. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and use them. So also, like in my other video, these are not in any particular order. I've not ranked them. I've not said that the last one is the best or the first one is the worst or anything like that. I just kind of sat down, made a list, got it down to 5 of the best horror books that I've read this year. So here we go. First one, or I should say first on the list, Wormwood by Poppy Z. Brite. I talked about this in a tier ranking video that I made, I think, over the summer. I had read this before. I can't remember when I read it, quite a long time ago. But this one just blew me away. This is a collection of short stories from Poppy Z. Brite. And I was really struck with how tragic these stories were and how sort of non-traditional they are, in the sense that they're not about monsters or demons or vampires. There's very little blood and guts and gore and things like that. But what there is just a whole lot of tragedy. I think every one of the stories is about loss or is about tragedy, or at least has that in an underpinning element that drives the plot and the narrative. On top of that, her writing is just absolutely amazing. It's really beautiful writing. It's really touching writing. It can be very sad at times, and it can also be very beautiful at times. But really just, I think, a very overlooked writer. She primarily published in the 90s and into the early 2000s. She hasn't really published much more. I know she's since transitioned and changed her gender, but at the time of Poppy Z. Brite was a she, so that's kind of why I'm using that. And those books are still published under that name. So there we go. Second one was a recent read for me. Things We Lost in the Fire. Sorry, I'm looking at my list here. Things We Lost in the Fire. God, I hope I pronounced this correctly. Mariana, Enriquez. I think I got it. Yeah, another short story collection. I have really loved short stories, particularly horror short stories. I think they are an underappreciated art form. Yeah, similar to Poppy Z. Brite, these are similar to Wormwood, I should say. There are not monsters here. There's not a lot of blood and guts. It's not serial killers. It's not Friday the 13th type horror. These are very well-written short stories with always sort of an underpinning menace, so there's always kind of like this fear or a menace that's lurking in the background. A lot of the stories are centered around the lives of young women, and how that kind of horrifying element is also kind of bound to something in society, and how that shapes the lives of the young women, or can cause their lives to end in some stories. It can cause them to make very bad choices in some stories. It can drive families apart, things like that. I've done a recent video on that. I can put a link in the description below. I'm not going to do the cards because I hate those. I don't know how those work. Really great writer. I was really happy to find this. Probably one of the better books I've read this year. So Things We Lost in the Fire, Mariana, Enriquez, absolutely fantastic stuff. Next one was a surprise for me, experimental film by Gemma Files. I talked about this in the previous tier ranking video I made that I mentioned. This has a really great story, really great novel. It's not too long, it's pretty short. It has one of the tropes that I really like, which is the haunted film trope or haunted film set or something like that. So what this is a sort of, it starts as kind of a journalistic piece of someone trying to figure out what happened with a film producer and a mysterious film that person made, which allegedly is kind of cursed. And supposedly all of his productions were very secretive and there were lots of strange deaths surrounding them and things like that. That's the kind of horror that I really like. I'm not going to talk about the movies that are similar to this. That's maybe I'm going to get too long-winded there. But definitely a great book from a great writer. I'd never read anything else from her before, Gemma Files, so I need to check out more of her work. Next one is a writer that I have always really enjoyed, Kathe Koja, but this one is Skin, a book that doesn't really get talked about much. She's well known for her Cipher, which is fantastic. I'm happy that she's known for that. It's a great novel. She's also kind of well known for her second novel, Bad Brains. This is her third published novel, or at least in the chronology of publication. This one is kind of, you can start to see a departure or a change in her writing, which is very good, it's very interesting. Sometimes that works well, sometimes it doesn't, but I think it works well for her in this one. So this one has kind of a body horror story, which is another type of horror that I really enjoy. If you're not sure what that means, think of like Alien. That's body horror. Even though it's science fiction, it's actually body horror. But this is also a story of love, a story of obsession, and a story about artists who are trying to perfect their art and their skin, if you will. I guess I won't say a whole lot more about that. Maybe I should do another video on this. But really great book, really great writer. Another writer that I think is kind of overlooked. She's well known, but doesn't get a lot of, like, I don't see many people talking about her on BookTube or on Instagram and all that other stuff. And I wish a lot of people would. Same with Brite, another great writer that I think really, really deserves a lot more attention. Okay, so that's number 4. Last one, again, these were not in any kind of order. Last one, this was another reread, The Books of Blood, Volume 1 by Clive Barker. Wow, I was so happy to reread this. This was just such a pleasure. Clive Barker, as a short story writer, a lot of people have problems with some of his novels. I have problems with some of his novels. But as a short story writer, wow, just an absolute master. I think, I've said this in other videos, I think Clive Barker could be writing in any genre. He could write literary fiction. He could probably write a romance that's good. You know, the guy is just a great storyteller. And that's what I mean by that. He's so good at storytelling, I think he could write in any genre. But he's primarily chosen horror. He does write some kind of like fantasy horror also, which I'm not a huge fan of. But these short stories are just absolutely perfect. If you want a master class in how to write great short stories and how to write great horror stories and how to write great horror short stories, I think you could not do worse than this. Similar to the Wormwood stories from Brite, very tragic stories, and similar to Mariana and Enriquez, always a feeling, an underpinning feeling of menace in these stories. Although these stories Clive Barker's got no problem at all with coming right out with the monsters or the weird demons or whatever. And that's another thing that I really like about him is he's very creative when it comes to his evil beings, if you will. They're clearly rooted in, you know, mythology and folklore, but he's really great at putting unique twists on them and bringing them to life. I mean, oftentimes the horror element in here is a character. It's not just a force that shapes the narrative. Oftentimes whatever it is, the monster, the demon, the vampire, whatever, is a character, which is really interesting. Not a lot of writers are able to pull that off. Clive Barker is an absolute master at it. So there you go. Apologies for sore throat and all that kind of stuff, but this is 5 great horror books that I read in 2024. Like I said at the beginning, this is kind of a series of videos that I'm doing. I've got one about crime books. I've got another one coming soon about comics, manga, graphic novels, and then another one about literary fiction that I read in 2024. So please check those out. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. Please give me a subscribe and all that stuff. I very rarely ask for that, but I do hope to get it. Once again, my name is Carl, and this has been Please Read Your Book, and I'll see you again soon.